The hospital corridor was a blur of sterile white, the kind that burned your eyes if you stared too long. I clutched the clipboard to my chest, my sneakers squeaking against the linoleum as I ran toward room 312, where the alarms were screaming. A patient was coding, and I was the only nurse on the floor who could keep her cool when death came knocking. My name is Clara, and I'm a night nurse. Not just any nursey, a damn good one. But to my mother-in-law, Evelyn, I was nothing more than a glorified servant, unworthy of her precious son, Daniel. She'd made that clear from the moment we met, her lips curling as she sized up my scrubs, her voice dripping with disdain. A night nurse. How quaint. That night, as I fought to save a stranger's life, I had no idea I was about to unravel a secret that would shatter Evelyn's perfect world and force her to see me for who I really was. The shift started like any other, endless rounds. Charting vitals, dodging the occasional drunk patient in the ER. But at 2 a.m., a new patient was wheeled in, a man, late 50s, unconscious, his chart marked John Doe. His face was bruised, his suit torn, like he'd been in a fight. Something about him felt familiar, though I couldn't place it. I worked fast, hooking him up to monitors, checking his vitals. His pulse was weak, his breathing shallow. "Stay with me," I whispered, adjusting the 4. The other nurses were swamped, and the doctor was stuck in surgery. So it was just me and John Doe against the clock. As I stabilized him, I noticed a monogrammed cufflink on his torn sleeve. R.L. My stomach twisted. Those initials, they belonged to someone I'd heard about, but never met. Someone tied to Evelyn's pristine world. Daniel and I had been married for 3 years, but his mother had never accepted me. To her, I was a nobody, a woman who worked grueling night shifts while her son, a corporate lawyer, deserved someone better. She'd parade her friends' daughters at family dinners, hinting they were more suitable, their pedigrees polished to a shine. Daniel always defended me, but I could see the strain in his eyes, the weight of choosing between his mother's approval and our love. That night, as I sat by John Doe's bedside, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Mom's coming over tomorrow. Wants to talk about our future. Brace yourself." I sighed, rubbing my temples. Evelyn's talks were lectures, her way of reminding me I didn't belong. But I had no time to dwell. John Doe's monitor beeped erratically. I adjusted his oxygen, my hands steady despite the exhaustion creeping in. That's when I saw it, a photo tucked in his wallet, slipped out during the chaos. It was Evelyn, younger, smiling, her arm around a man who looked just like the one lying in front of me. My heart raced. Was this man Robert Langston, Evelyn's ex-husband, Daniel's father, the man who'd vanished from their lives years ago, leaving only whispers of scandal? I'd heard rumors of affairs, debts, a messy divorce, but Evelyn had buried the details, crafting a narrative of herself as the wronged, perfect matriarch. If this was Robert, what was he doing here, beaten and broken in my hospital? I didn't have answers yet, but a fire lit inside me. Evelyn had spent years tearing me down, calling me unworthy. If this man held the key to her past, I was going to find out. Not for revenge, but for truth. For Daniel. For us. The rest of the shift was a blur. I stabilized Robert, if that was his name, and handed him off to the morning crew. But I couldn't shake the image of that photo or the questions it raised. Why was he here now? What had happened to him? And why did my gut tell me Evelyn's carefully curated life was about to unravel? When I got home at dawn, Daniel was already up, sipping coffee in our small apartment. "You look wrecked," he said, concern softening his voice. I kissed him, the warmth of his presence grounding me. "Rough night," I said, not ready to tell him about Robert. Not yet. I needed proof, something solid to confront Evelyn with. Because if I was right, this wasn't just about her past, it was about our future. Evelyn arrived that afternoon, her designer coat sweeping the floor like she was royalty. Clara, she said, barely glancing at me. I hope you've been reconsidering your career. Daniel needs a wife who can keep up with his status. Her words stung, but I smiled tightly, thinking of the cufflink. The photo. The man in room 312. Let's talk about worth. Evelyn, I said softly, my voice steady. You might be surprised what a lowly night nurse can uncover. She raised an eyebrow, oblivious to the storm coming her way. But I saw it in her eyes, a flicker of unease. For the first time, I felt the power shift. I wasn't just Clara, the night nurse. I was Clara, the woman who was about to expose the truth. The hospital was quieter the next night, but my mind was a storm. I couldn't stop thinking about Robert Langston, the man in room 312, and what his sudden appearance meant. If he was Daniel's father, why had he shown up now, after decades of silence? And why was he beaten, left for dead? I needed answers, but I had to be careful. Evelyn's influence ran deep, and I wasn't naive enough to think she'd let her secrets slip without a fight. I checked Robert's chart first thing. He was stable, but still unconscious. His face a map of bruises. The police had been by, but with no ID confirmed. They'd left it to the hospital to sort out. I scanned his belongings again, hoping for more clues. The cufflink and photo were still there, tucked in an evidence bag. The photo was old, its edges worn, but Evelyn's face was unmistakably younger, softer, before she'd built her fortress of pride. I slipped the photo into my pocket. It wasn't stealing. It was evidence. I needed something to show Daniel, something to make him believe me before I confronted Evelyn. But as I worked my rounds, doubt crept in. What if I was wrong? What if this man wasn't Robert? I'd be accusing my mother-in-law of hiding a past she'd worked hard to erase. And that could destroy what little peace Daniel and I had. At 3 a.m., I sat by Robert's bedside, watching the rise and fall of his chest. "Who are you?" I whispered, half expecting him to answer. His hand twitched, and for a moment, I thought he might wake. But he didn't. Instead, my phone buzzed a call from Daniel. "Clara, Mom's acting weird," he said, his voice low. "She keeps asking if you've mentioned anything strange from work. What's going on?" My heart sank. Had Evelyn sensed something? "Nothing's wrong," I lied, hating myself for it. "Just a long shift. I'll see you in the morning." I hung up, my hands shaking. Evelyn was no fool. She'd built her life on control, and if she suspected I was digging into her past, she'd come for me. The rest of the night dragged on, each beep of the monitors like a countdown. I couldn't shake the feeling that Robert's arrival wasn't random. Someone had hurt him, and I needed to know why. When my shift ended, I drove straight to the library, where I could access public records without Evelyn's prying eyes. I searched for Robert Langston, cross-referencing dates and names. It wasn't easy. Evelyn had done a good job scrubbing him from her history, but I found a divorce filing from 20 years ago, listing Robert as her ex-husband. No details, just a cold, legal end to their marriage. There was something else. A newspaper clipping from a small-town paper, dated a year after the divorce. It mentioned a Robert L., involved in a fraud scandal, disappearing before charges could be filed. My pulse quickened. If this was the same man, Evelyn's perfect image was a lie. She wasn't just the wronged wife. She'd been tied to a man who'd left a trail of chaos. I printed the clipping and tucked it with the photo. This was enough to talk to Daniel, but I needed more to face Evelyn. She'd dismiss me, call me delusional, unless I had undeniable proof. Back home, Daniel was waiting, his face tense. "Clara, what's going on? You're acting distant, and Mom's on edge. Did something happen at work?" I took a deep breath, pulling out the photo and clipping. "Daniel, I think your father's in my hospital." His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like a boy, not the confident lawyer I knew. "My father. He's been gone for years. Mom said he was dead." I shook my head. showing him the evidence. He's alive, Daniel. And I think your mother's been hiding something. He stared at the photo, his hands trembling. Why would she lie? He whispered. I touched his arm, my voice soft but firm. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out for us. Daniel nodded, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Confronting Evelyn meant challenging everything he'd been raised to believe. That afternoon, Evelyn called, her voice sharp. Clara, we need to talk. Come to the house. Alone. My stomach churned, but I agreed. If she wanted to fight, I'd be ready. I just didn't know how deep her secrets went and how far she'd go to protect them. Evelyn's mansion loomed like a fortress, its manicured lawn and marble steps screaming wealth. I parked my beat-up sedan, feeling like an intruder. Inside, Evelyn sat in her pristine living room, her posture rigid, a glass of wine in her hand. Clara, she said, her voice cold, you've been poking around where you don't belong. I froze, the photo and clipping burning a hole in my purse. She knew. Somehow, she knew. I don't know what you mean, I said, keeping my tone even. Her eyes narrowed, sharp as a blade. Don't play dumb. You're a nurse, not a detective. Stick to your place. Her words cut, but I held my ground. My place is with Daniel. And if something from your past is hurting him, I have a right to know. Evelyn laughed. A brittle sound. You. A right. You're nothing but a temporary mistake in my son's life. The venom in her voice was familiar, but this time, it fueled me. I pulled out the photo, slamming it on the table. Then explained this. Robert Langston, your ex-husband, is in my hospital, beaten half to death. Care to tell me why? Evelyn's face paled, but she recovered quickly, her lips curling into a sneer. You're delusional. That man's a ghost, and you're chasing shadows. But her hands shook as she reached for her wine. I pressed harder. He had your photo, Evelyn, and I found records of a fraud scandal tied to his name. What are you hiding? She stood, her voice rising. You have no idea what you're meddling in. Leave it alone, or you'll regret it. The threat hung heavy, but I didn't back down. I'm not afraid of you, I said, my voice steady. I'm doing this for Daniel. She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. You'll destroy him if you keep this up. Walk away, Clara. I left, my heart pounding. Evelyn wasn't just defensive, she was scared. That meant I was close to something big. Back at the hospital, I checked on Robert. He was awake, groggy, his eyes scanning the room like a trapped animal. Who are you? He rasped as I adjusted his fore. Clara, I said softly. I'm married to Daniel Langston. His eyes widened, a mix of shock and something else, guilt. Maybe. Daniel, he murmured. My boy. My breath caught. It was him. Robert Langston, the man Evelyn had erased. Before I could ask more, he grabbed my wrist, his grip weak but desperate. Don't tell her I'm here. She'll finish what she started. My blood ran cold. Finish what? I asked, but he slipped back into unconsciousness. I stood there, the weight of his words sinking in. Evelyn wasn't just hiding a scandal, she might be dangerous. I needed to protect Daniel, but I also needed the truth. I called a friend from nursing school, Mia, who worked in records. Can you dig up anything on Robert Langston? Hospital admissions, police reports, anything, I said. She promised to try. That night, Daniel came home late, his face drawn. Mom called, he said. She told me you're stirring up trouble, accusing her of things. Clara, what's going on? I sat him down, showing him the clipping again. Your father's alive, Daniel. And I think your mother's been lying about what happened between them. I think she might have hurt him. He stared at me, torn between disbelief and fear. Hurt him? Clara, that's insane. She's my mother. I took his hand, my voice gentle. I know it's hard, but we need to know the truth. For you. For us. He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. I was asking him to question everything he knew about his family. The next day, Mia called. Clara, I found something. Robert was admitted to a hospital 15 years ago, same injuries. Same story. Beaten. No ID. The case was dropped. But there's a note about a female suspect who was never charged. My heart raced. Evelyn. It had to be. But why? And how could I prove it without tearing Daniel apart? I barely slept. My mind racing with Mia's discovery. A female suspect. Beaten. Just like now. The pieces were falling into place. But they painted a picture I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Evelyn wasn't just a controlling matriarch, she might be capable of violence. And if she'd hurt Robert before, what was stopping her now? At the hospital, I checked on Robert again. He was more lucid, his eyes clearer but haunted. Clara, he said, his voice hoarse. You need to be careful. Evelyn, she doesn't forgive. I leaned closer, keeping my voice low. What happened between you two? Why did you disappear? He looked away, pain etching his face. I made mistakes. Gambled. Cheated. She wanted me gone. And when I fought back, she made sure I paid. My stomach churned. Paid how? I asked. He shook his head, fear flickering in his eyes. Just keep Daniel safe. She'll do anything to protect her image. Before I could press further, a nurse interrupted, needing me for another patient. I left Robert, my mind spinning. Evelyn had built her life on lies, and Robert's return threatened to expose them. But how far would she go to keep her secrets buried? I called Daniel, asking him to meet me at the hospital after my shift. I needed him to see his father, to hear the truth from Robert's lips. But when I got home, Evelyn was there, sitting in our living room like she owned it. Clara, she said, her voice icy. You're testing my patience. Stop digging, or you'll lose everything. Her threat was clear, but I was done being intimidated. I know about Robert, I said, holding her gaze. He's awake, and he's talking. What did you do to him? Evelyn. For a split second, her composure cracked, fear flashing across her face. Then she laughed, cold and sharp. You think you can scare me? A night nurse with delusions of grandeur. You're out of your depth. She left, but her words lingered like poison. When Daniel arrived, I told him everything: Robert's injuries, his warning, Mia's findings. His face crumpled, torn between love for his mother and the growing evidence against her. I need to see him, he said finally. I need to know. We drove to the hospital in silence, the weight of the truth pressing down on us. Robert was awake when we arrived, his eyes lighting up at the sight of Daniel. My boy, he whispered, tears welling. Daniel froze, emotions warring on his face. Why did you leave? He asked, his voice breaking. Robert's gaze dropped. I wasn't a good man. But your mother, she made sure I could never come back. Before he could say more, an alarm sounded, another patient coding. I rushed out, leaving Daniel with his father. When I returned, Daniel was pale, his hands clenched. He told me things, he said, his voice hollow. About Mom. About what she did to keep him away. I held him, feeling his pain as my own. We'll figure this out, I promised. Together. But the next morning, Robert was gone. His bed was empty, his chart marked discharged against medical advice. Panic gripped me. Had Evelyn gotten to him? I called Mia, asking her to check security footage. She found a clip of a woman in a dark coat near Robert's room at 4 a.m. It was grainy, but the posture, the elegancy, it was Evelyn. I showed Daniel the footage. She took him, I said, my voice trembling. She's covering her tracks. Daniel's face hardened. We need to find him before she does something worse. We were in too deep now, and there was no turning back. Evelyn's secrets were unraveling, and I was ready to pull the final thread. Daniel and I sat in our car outside Evelyn's mansion, the night cloaking us in shadows. We had no proof she'd taken Robert, but the security footage and his sudden disappearance were enough to convince us she was involved. What if we're wrong? Daniel whispered, his voice tight. What if she didn't do anything? I squeezed his hand. We're not wrong, and we're not stopping until we find him. We'd spent the day digging deeper. Mia had pulled more records, hospital admissions, police reports, even a restraining order Evelyn had filed against Robert years ago, claiming he was unstable. But the details didn't add up. The order was filed after his first beating, when he'd vanished. It felt like a cover, a way to paint him as the villain. I'd also called a contact at the police station, an officer I'd met during ER shifts. Clara, there's no active case on Robert Langston, he said, but I'll keep an eye out. Be careful, this sounds messy. Messy didn't begin to cover it. Evelyn had built a fortress of lies, and we were about to breach it. We decided to confront her. Not at her house, that was her territory, but at a neutral place. Daniel called, asking her to meet us at a coffee shop downtown. She agreed. Her voice clipped, like she was humoring us. When we arrived, she was already there. Her posture perfect. Her eyes cold. This is ridiculous, she said as we sat down. You're dragging my son into your paranoid fantasies. Mom, stop, Daniel said, his voice firm. Where's Dad? We know he was in the hospital, and now he's gone. What did you do? Evelyn's face tightened, but she didn't flinch. Your father is a liar and a criminal. If he's gone, good riddance. I leaned forward, my voice low. We have footage. Evelyn, a woman at the hospital, the night he disappeared. It was you. For the first time, she faltered, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. You have nothing, she said, but her voice wavered. Daniel leaned in, his eyes blazing. Mom, tell me the truth. Did you hurt him? Did you make him leave all those years ago? Evelyn's lips trembled, but she held her ground. You don't understand, she whispered. I did what I had to do to protect you. Protect me? Daniel's voice broke. You lied to me my whole life. You told me he was dead. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't buy it. She'd played the victim too long. Where is he? Evelyn. I pressed. What did you do? She stood, her chair scraping the floor. This conversation is over, she said, and walked out. We followed her, keeping our distance. She drove to a storage facility on the edge of town, a place I'd never seen her mention. Daniel and I exchanged a glance. She's hiding something, he said. We waited until she left, then slipped inside, using a code Mia had found in old records tied to Robert. Inside, we found a locked unit with Robert's name on it. Daniel broke the lock with a crowbar from his car. Inside were boxes, files, photos, bank statements, evidence of Robert's fraud. Yes, but also letters from Evelyn, threatening him if he ever came near Daniel. One document stood out, a signed confession from Robert, admitting to the fraud, dated after his first beating. It was coerced. I was sure of it. Evelyn had forced him to take the fall, to disappear, to protect her image. We have to find him, Daniel said, his voice shaking with anger. She can't get away with this. I nodded, my heart heavy. Evelyn's lies had torn their family apart, but the truth might destroy what was left. We had to act fast before she silenced Robert for good. The storage unit felt like a tomb, the air thick with dust and secrets. Daniel clutched the confession letter, his knuckles white. She did this, he said, his voice raw. She ruined him, and she lied to me. I touched his shoulder, my heart aching for him. We'll make this right, I said, but we need to find Robert before she does. We took the documents and left, Our minds racing. The letters painted a clear picture. Evelyn had orchestrated Robert's downfall, framing him for fraud to protect her reputation. But why the violence? Why now? My gut told me Robert's return wasn't random, come back for a reason, and Evelyn wanted him gone before he could talk. We drove to the police station. The documents in a folder. The officer I'd spoken to, Detective Harris, met us in a small office. "This is serious," he said, scanning the confession. "If this was coerced, it's evidence of extortion, maybe assault. But we need Robert to confirm it." I told him about the hospital footage, Evelyn's visit, Robert's disappearance. Harris nodded, his face grim. "I'll put out an alert for him, and I'll question Evelyn. But Clara, Daniel, this could get ugly." It already was. When we got home, Evelyn was waiting outside our apartment, her face a mask of fury. "You went to the police," she hissed. "You're destroying our family." Daniel stepped forward, his voice cold. "You did that, Mom. You lied about Dad. You hurt him." Evelyn's eyes darted between us, her composure cracking. "I had no choice," she said, her voice breaking. "He was going to ruin us." "Ruin you? You mean?" I said, unable to hold back. "You let Daniel believe his father was dead to save your image. And now you've taken him again." Evelyn's face twisted, a mix of guilt and defiance. "You don't understand," she said. "I did it for Daniel." But Daniel shook his head, stepping back. "No, Mom. You did it for you." She left, her shoulders slumped. But I didn't trust her defeat. She was cornered, and cornered animals were dangerous. That night, Harris called. "We found Robert," he said. "He's at a motel on Route 9. Beat up, but alive. He's talking, Clara, and he's got a lot to say about Evelyn." We raced to the motel, my heart pounding. Robert was in a small room, his face bruised, but his eyes clear. "Clara, Daniel," he said, his voice weak but steady. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Daniel sat beside him, tears in his eyes. "Why didn't you fight for me?" he asked. Robert sighed, pain etched in every line of his face. "I tried. But Evelyn, she had evidence. Leverage. She threatened to take you away forever." He told us everything, the fraud he'd been part of, Evelyn's role in covering it up, the beatings she'd arranged to silence him. "She wanted me gone," he said. "And when I came back to see you, Daniel, she found out." I listened, my anger growing. Evelyn hadn't just manipulated everyone, including her own son. Harris arrived, taking Robert's statement. "This is enough to charge her," he said. "But it'll be a fight. She's got money, connections." Daniel looked at me, his eyes resolute. "I don't care," he said. "She needs to face this." I nodded, proud of his strength. For years, Evelyn had belittled me, but now I saw her for what she was, a woman who'd do anything to protect her lies. As we left the motel, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The truth was out, but the battle wasn't over. Evelyn would fight back, and I had to be ready for Daniel, for Robert, for the family we were trying to rebuild. The courtroom was cold, its wooden benches hard against my back. Evelyn sat across from us, her face a mask of composure, but I could see the cracks, her hands clasped too tightly, her eyes avoiding Daniel's. Today was the day her lies would face judgment, and I was ready to see it through. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Robert's statement, backed by the documents from the storage unit, had led to Evelyn's arrest. She'd been charged with extortion and conspiracy to commit assault, but her lawyers were fierce, painting her as a victim of Robert's schemes. Daniel and I sat through every hearing, his hand in mine, our bond stronger than ever. Evelyn had tried to break us, but she'd only made us fight harder. Robert took the stand, his voice steady despite his frail frame. He recounted everything, a fraud, Evelyn's threats, the beatings she'd orchestrated. "I wanted to see my son," he said, looking at Daniel. But she made sure I couldn't. The courtroom was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Daniel's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. When it was my turn to testify, I stood tall. My nurse's scrubs traded for a simple dress. Evelyn's lawyer tried to discredit me, calling me just a night nurse with no business in their family. But I held my ground, detailing how I'd found Robert. The photo, the records, the truth. "I'm not just a nurse," I said, my voice clear. "I'm Daniel's wife. And I fought for the truth because I love him." The jury deliberated for hours. But when they returned, their verdict was unanimous: guilty. Evelyn's face crumpled as the judge sentenced her to 5 years, with parole possible in 3. She looked at Daniel, pleading silently, but he turned away. "You made your choices," he said softly, his voice breaking. "Now I'm making mine." After the trial, we visited Robert in the hospital, where he was recovering. He and Daniel talked for hours, rebuilding what Evelyn had tried to destroy. It wasn't easy. Years of pain couldn't be erased overnight, but it was a start. I watched them, my heart full. I'd been called unworthy, but I'd proven my worth, not just to Evelyn, but to myself. Back home, Daniel pulled me close, his eyes soft. "You never gave up," he said, "even when she tried to tear you down." I smiled, tears in my eyes. "I did it for us," I said, "and for you." He kissed me, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not as a lowly night nurse, but as Clara, the woman who'd fought for her family. Evelyn's conviction wasn't the end. There were still wounds to heal, relationships to mend. But as I went back to my night shifts, saving lives in the chaos of the ER, I carried a new strength. I wasn't just a nurse. I was a wife, a fighter, a woman who'd uncovered the truth and rebuilt a family from its ashes. The hospital corridor was still sterile white, but it didn't burn my eyes anymore. It was my world, my battleground, where I'd proven I was more than enough. And as Daniel waited for me at home, I knew we'd face whatever came next together.